Special thanks to Squarespace for sponsoring today's video. Hello guys, Winston here. America is on the precipice of a new era, and no, I'm not referring to the epidemiological rumpus going on, I mean for humanity and space exploration. When the United States retired the space shuttle way back in 2011, there was no replacement ready to take its place. America suddenly forfeited the ability to put people in space. Programs like the Commercial Crew Program were supposed to have us back in space by 2015. Constellation was supposed to have us exploring the moon and more just a few years later. None of that happened. Budgetary issues, technical setbacks, and floundering political will left NASA with no domestic means to ferry astronauts into space. At this very moment, every astronaut and cosmonaut currently on the International Space Station got there on a Russian Soyuz capsule. But, barring any delays or mishaps, that all changes later this month. NASA is scheduled to launch 2 astronauts to the ISS atop a SpaceX Falcon 9 rocket on board a Crew Dragon capsule in about 2 weeks. A nearly decade-long drought of astronaut launches from Cape Canaveral is about to be broken. And to commemorate that occasion, I thought I would do a little aerospace-inspired project. On Thingiverse, there is a pretty good-looking model of the Crew Dragon with its payload-toting trunk shared by user Zastro. But instead of 3D printing it, which would be boring, I wanted to machine it out of aluminum. And the fact that the trunk is still attached in the model is actually a big plus for machinability, since it means I'll have a nice flat area to connect the model to the rest of my stock. Now, because of the geometric complexities of the Crew Dragon model, I'll be machining this on Pasha, my Pocket NC V210. The material I'll be starting from is some 1-inch diameter aluminum roundstock held in the ER40 collet for the rotary table. The first thing I did in Fusion was to scale the STL model I downloaded to fit within a 1-inch diameter cylinder, and oriented the model so that the fins were parallel to the X and Y axes. That 1-inch diameter cylinder then conveniently became the placeholder stock volume for my cam setup. The only additional things I had to do in the design workspace was to model up a little stump that the Dragon could remain attached to during machining, and draw in several containment sketches for the machining operations across multiple orientations. Now, as I go into the manufacturing workspace and review the machining operations I settled on, remember that what you see here is the finalized version of the toolpaths I ended up with for this project. I did not come up with something this well organized on the first try. Here's the gist of the machining process. Step 1 was to rough as much as I could from the positive Y direction using Carbide 3D's 278Z end mill. I really like this tool on the V210 because as a 1/4-inch cutter, it's super rigid. And being a single flute end mill, the torque requirements on the spindle are reduced. You can rock it into the aluminum at 10,000 RPM for maximum surface speed, but only encounter cutting resistance once per revolution instead of 2 or 3 times. Roughing from this direction is also the most efficient way to clear material, because later on when you come in from the sides, adaptive toolpaths will want to do a lot of rapid moves to go from one side of the fin to the other, going in these big upside down U-shaped paths. And the V210 doesn't have the rapid feed rates to make these repositioning moves negligible from a time perspective. However, I couldn't avoid machining from the sides entirely. The radius of the cutter would leave a lot of material between the fins and the trunk, plus I just didn't have the length in my end mill to go fins deep. So the next 4 orthogonally oriented adaptive toolpaths all had rest machining enabled to clean up what the first toolpath missed. Next up was to clean up the fins while keeping a minimal amount of stock to leave. This would prevent issues with the subsequent rotary finishing toolpath, since that would want to plunge down through the leftover stock on the sides of the fins, likely causing chatter. I then did sort of a pre-finishing pass to reduce the amount of work that the next end mill would have to do. And then, after removing the vast majority of the stock to leave that was protruding radially from the trunk, it would be safe to do a finishing toolpath around the fins. The last act of tool number 1 would be to clean up the area underneath my Dragon capsule around the stump. I'm using a rotary toolpath constrained to that particular region. Next up to be used was a 1/16" ball end mill. This would be the primary finishing tool for my model. I started with a coarse step-over rotary toolpath to get anything missed by the 1/4-inch single flute earlier. My primary area of concern was the divots for the maneuvering thrusters. I kept a couple thou of stock to leave and also enabled feed optimization, so when I did run into tight spots and corners with high engagement, the CNC would automatically slow down. Following this was one last contour pass on the fins. If my current tool had any runout or my previous tool had left a little more material than expected, then my final finishing rotary toolpath would kiss the aluminum around the fins. This sort of spring pass would ensure that any incidental contact would just graze the fins and not significantly alter their surface finish. If I had a machine that cost an extra 0 or 2, I could measure and comp for tool wear and runout and not worry about a thou or two of accidental tool contact. And then the final rotary finishing toolpath would be run on the model, taking well over an hour to complete. I was also prepared to use a 1/32 inch ball end mill to further define some of the subtler features on this model, like the solar panels and details on the capsule, but in the end I skipped these toolpaths. I realized that I was approaching a level of obsession that was counterproductive. I have to remember that I'm machining this on a pocket NC and not something like a kern. With the finishing toolpaths complete, I would then use an 1/8 inch single flute end mill to tab off my model. So let's see how this plan of attack played out. Adaptive clearing went exactly how you would expect. Steady, methodical material removal that sounded great. Without the speed of a 50,000 RPM spindle, the rigidity of a 1/4 inch cutter is the next best thing. A nice, relatively clean tone is what you want to hear. The adaptive from the sides came out great as well, though the reduced efficiency of that toolpathing was quite evident. The pre-finishing rotary toolpath with the 278 did its job really well, and I actually quite liked the surface finish left by the end mill, but alas, that 278Z was too fat to finish the entire model. The surface speed of a 1/4 inch end mill meant that these fins would never be shinier. The cutting edges of smaller tools will have lower velocities and leave a duller finish on whatever they touch. This is one area where a V250 would be vastly more desirable than Pasha. And then the rotary finishing toolpath at the end of Program 1 was honestly kind of cringeworthy, but whatever. It did the job it was supposed to. I manually dropped the feed rate by about 50% on that first revolution around the stump because the end mill is taking a full width of cut, and then the subsequent passes sounded much better. Next up was finishing with my 111 16th inch ball end mill. Initial approach with the coarse rotary toolpath went as expected. And the final finishing rotary was pretty okay as well. Feed optimization was fantastic for reducing chatter in the corners and in the reaction control thrusters that the end mill had to plunge into. The surface finish on the sloped faces was noticeably different than the ones on the vertical faces. That's just a function of how surface speed changes depending on where along a ball end mill's profile you make contact with the material. Even so, I was still pretty pleased with the level of detail afforded by just using a 16th inch ball end mill for finishing. I did also try a rotary finishing toolpath that was offset from the center line. This let me hit the sides of the fins with the ball nose end mill, but I had to run the toolpath a second time with the offset reversed to finish the areas that were occluded by the fins the first time. After seeing the results, I decided that this method really wasn't worth the additional time of setting up and running an extra rotary finishing toolpath. If I had a native fusion model, I could also try and use better toolpaths like multi-axis flow and finish this model in a more optimal manner. The perpendicularly protruding fins here really make rotary less than ideal. Another thing I tried to use was a spiral toolpath on the nose of the Dragon capsule from the top. I thought I could patch together toolpaths from different directions, but it turns out that's not really ideal. Even the slightest misalignment in your rotary axes will cause perceptible discontinuities in areas where the toolpaths overlap. Let me illustrate this with a crude example. If we want to do a finishing pass on geometry like a pyramid with, let's say, a parallel toolpath from the top overlapping a parallel toolpath from the side, under ideal conditions that would be a piece of cake. A-axis rotates 90 degrees, you machine the tip of the pyramid which removes this material. The A-axis would then rotate back to 0 and you machine away the sides. Everything would line up perfectly. But if when you machine the tip of the pyramid there's a tiny misalignment in the A-axis, which I am wildly exaggerating here, when it comes time to machine the sides, your toolpaths will not line up. You will feel and see a transition line between the finishing toolpaths, and the further away from the axis of rotation, the worse it will be. On top of that, the direction of cutting forces and deflection will be different in the tool depending on how you touch the model. The surface texture is going to be noticeably different between the toolpaths. Even on professional multi-axis machining centers, it's not uncommon for a programmer to lock down as many axes as possible. They want to use the minimum numbers of degrees of freedom to finish a part. Less moving axes is less opportunities for error. And also, finishing a model like this in a single continuous rotation means that even if there is a rotary calibration error in the B axis, it's going to happen so gradually between stepovers that you really won't notice it. Unless, of course, you go from 0 degrees to 360 degrees, and the toolpath at the end doesn't line up with the toolpath from the beginning, which I did have occur on the first Dragon capsule. What I believe happened is that during the rotary finishing toolpath, the ball nose end mill had been trying to plow through remaining stock at the root of the fins and caused the Z-axis motor to lose steps, progressively drifting further and further away from the model. Re-zeroing the machine and running the final rotary toolpath a second time fixed that defect. And in future iterations, I was much more diligent about running that pre-finishing rotary to make sure that the last rotary toolpath was as light as possible. On subsequent runs as well, you'll notice that Pasha is elevated on some scrap wood. This was to allow me to use longer sections of bar stock that would stick through the rotary table. ER40 collet work holding isn't the most efficient system in the world because some stock needs to remain within the collet. So whatever length of bar you start with, you automatically lose about 5 centimeters of it. Feeding through a single, longer piece of stock lets you machine more capsules with one piece of waste. Splitting that bar stock into several shorter lengths would result in an equal number of pieces of scrap. You can of course reduce the amount of leftover waste if you can grip less of your stock in the collet. And that's what this sketchy bit of work holding that you see here was about. As long as your collet is supported on both sides from the inside so it doesn't get crushed as you tighten down on the tapered nuts, it shouldn't cause any lasting damage to the collet. I ended up running several iterations of my Crew Dragon program because despite how long it took to run, the time between user inputs was also quite lengthy. So I could load material or change tools, go do some CAD work, and then come back after an hour or two to continue on to the next step in the machining process. And that left me with a flock of dragons, or whatever it is you call a group of dragons. A gaggle maybe, a herd, a murder, whatever. Point is, I have dragons to spare. 1 or 2 of these will probably go to SpaceX employees I know, I'll keep the worst one for myself, and maybe when I overhaul my website I'll sell one of these as well. And that will be super easy to do with the sponsor of today's video, Squarespace. Squarespace provides a powerful, elegant platform on which you can build whatever website you need for your business. Whether it's a blog, portfolio, or storefront, Squarespace can help you make it a reality. If you're a seller, Squarespace offers a variety of e-commerce tools to help you get off the ground, including templates, inventory management tools, a simple checkout system, and secure payment methods. Regardless of what you sell, these tools make it easy for you to put your best foot forward. Head over to squarespace.com to start a 14-day free trial, and when you're ready to launch, go to squarespace.com/WinstonMoy to save 10% off your first purchase of a website or domain. You save money and look awesome on the internet, and it helps support my content. I want to thank you all very much for watching, and thanks Squarespace for sponsoring this video. Keep an eye to the sky around the end of May, and go follow NASA and SpaceX on social media to learn about America's imminent return to human spaceflight. I'll be back soon with more CNC projects and DIY nonsense.